My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Blair and L.J. Nicholas. It's August 19th, 2025, and we're at LucidWild in Dundee. And Blair and L.J., thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
The first question, to get things started, either one of you can take this and run with it, is why wine?
Why wine? Well, I will say our first journey into wine was we started when we first met some 28 years ago. And we started drinking yellowtail and two-buck-chuck and looking for an alternative to beer and other alcohol. And we actually really enjoyed it. We enjoyed the experience of sitting down with a glass of wine and having it. And over time, we began to explore what wine would be like if we tried it from different vineyards. So we did some road trips to Napa Valley, we did road trips to Paso Robles, we also traveled a bit in Italy and Greece and New Zealand and France. And we just became very enamored with the entire farming process, as well as the winemaking journey. And we had some of our best conversations, some of our best times overlooking vineyards. Felt very grounded, and I think as we became more drawn not just to the drinking of wine, but the experience of farming and winemaking and what that life would look like, we started to drink different types of varietals. We started to upgrade our taste in nicer Pinot Noirs and Burgundian wines, and also Brunellos and different wines from around the world. And I will say that through our travels, we definitely felt a strong urge to be closer to the Burgundian wines. We really enjoyed our time in Burgundy. We loved how they processed their wine, their farming practices, how they did the native ferments, and how they went about making it. I was very impressed. I remember going down to a Burgundian winery, and they just talked about how they didn't manipulate the wine. It was very minimal intervention, and to let it's kind of the land before the hand, and allowing the land to speak, and going up and harvesting the grapes, crushing them as they've done for hundreds of years, putting them in the barrel, and letting that vintage speak for itself, and doing no real manipulation, letting that natural yeast through native ferments, a very patient process, spending time in a barrel of 16 to 18 months, spending longer in the bottle, which was new to us because some of the American wineries that we went to, their time in the barrel, time in the bottle were a lot shorter. And so it was drawn upon us that that patient process really pays off based on the structure of the wine and the aromas. And so as we became more drawn into the wine world, we decided that why don't we try a small vineyard at our house. And so we planted just 300 vines in the backyard, just a backyard vineyard. And
where was the house?
Yeah, the house in San Diego. It's our family home and 4 kids. And so we weren't mobile to pursue a project at that time. They were all in school. But we definitely wanted to explore what it'd be like to farm a vineyard, and whether it was something we would be interested in pursuing. And it was great. We did that for 6 or 7 years. 2014, and we continue to do that project now. But it was great because we got a chance to go out there and work on the trellis, to do canopy management, to prune, to do soil amendments, to look at the differences between irrigating a vineyard and dry farming a vineyard. And also, not only that, but involving our friends and family in that process. So we would have a little harvest party. We'd go out there and we'd all harvest the grapes. We would then have a breakfast And it was just this, we felt this real communal process. We also felt a real kind of tie to the land. And
then shared the wine with our family and friends. And it was, whether it was a little right before Thanksgiving, share the wine. And so it was just, we learned that was a big part of what we really enjoyed doing, not only drinking the wine, but sharing in the experience and having that experience together with family and friends. So.
Yeah, so that's based on that experience. We once our kids started a little bit older, we realized we were going to be empty nesters and have a little more freedom to travel and to focus on some of our own pursuits. We thought that I had retired from the practice of law. My wife had retired from the fitness industry, and we felt as though it was time to look at a potential winery project. And if you go to Burgundy, which is the wines we love, I think that most people will tell you if you're not going to do it in Burgundy, you should do it in Oregon. And so that immediately drew us to the Willamette Valley, and we came to IPNC.
Yep. Gosh, how many years ago? 15 years ago we came to IPNC. It was for your 40th. Yeah. I'm dating you now. Yeah, that was our first experience tasting the wines in Oregon, and just really fell in love with the wines and the people. We're both very outdoorsy and love Oregon, and so it was a natural place for us to come and pursue our love of wine and to find a vineyard that fit what we were looking for.
Yeah, and at IPNC we learned a lot about the processes here. Very impressed by them. Very what I loved is a lot of the wineries and vineyards are family owned, and we had that personal touch. We saw a lot of collaboration in the valley between different vintners, winemakers, and industry, and it just seemed like a very collegial place. People were extremely nice to us. I remember we did a tasting and a blending session over at Montazi, and they do a whole regenerative farming techniques, which is incredibly impressive given the time that he was doing that, and still does it. It's very impressive, and that was a wonderful experience. And as we looked around, I was just amazed that you could have vineyards in the forest. I just looked around and said, I can't believe they do this. They grow grapes here. It's in the middle of the forest. It's so green. It's so beautiful. I can't think of a more beautiful place to, if you're going to have a vineyard project and you're going to make wine, there's not a more beautiful place to do it. Not to mention the wines are outstanding. And as we drank more Oregonian wines, I think our preference for Oregonian wines outstripped our preference for Burgundian wines, even though they have a lot of similarities. And so through IPNC and our kids growing up and flying the nest, we came up to Oregon, and here we are in the Dundee Hills, and we're unbelievably humbled and honored to be able to be the second steward of this property. So that's the short version of the journey to wine.
So back up for a second, talk about life before wine. Let's talk about you, LJ. Let's talk about where you were born and raised, and kind of life up into your career.
So I was born in downtown Chicago, grew up on the south side of Chicago, and from there I, after college, went into the fitness industry, worked for Bally Total Fitness for a little over 25 years, and I spent half my time in operations, working between Chicago, Wisconsin, and California. And I went back to Chicago to our corporate office to run our marketing department, and I did that for the next 10 years. I met Blair right when I switched over to marketing, and then moved out to California. And I was able to continue my career at Bally and in marketing while raising 4 kids in Southern California. So I would take them with me on trips. I'd bring them back to Chicago. My mom would watch them. It worked really well. So that was my career until Bally closed its doors. And I was at a point where I was ready to do something different. And then at that point, we were getting into construction of our home in California, and I got very involved with that. And that turned into my next career, getting involved in architectural design, and which led to a transition here when we purchased the vineyard to take over the design, construction, and management of our project here.
So give us a lot, you mentioned it's a pretty long career in a lot of different parts of it. Tell me about some of the highlights from your sort of first career working with Valley.
I would say probably the highlight was first, I kind of was thrown into a position where I started while I was in college for a couple of years, teaching classes, being a trainer, those things. And then right after college, I went into management, running a large club in Chicago. And what I loved about that was just the people, was managing people, was coming up with solutions to problems. And it was that immediate reward that you would get by doing something well and with a great group of people, and that you were sharing it with others. They were coming in, having great experiences, and when that led into marketing years later, it was creating those, whether they were promotions or experiences for our employees or for our members, that it was about having that moment where you see an immediate response to what you've created. And that's kind of led into where we're at now, is Blair and I both love creating experiences for other people to enjoy, and then in turn it becomes really fun for us. So I would say my career at Valley was, I was very fortunate to be in a career that I was passionate about. Everyone says, do something that you're passionate about. And that's probably why I was there for so many years, and just loved the whole interaction with people.
All right, Blair, same question for you. Tell us about where you were born and raised and your kind of early life into your career.
Sure. I was born in Mesa, Arizona. Three siblings, 2 brothers, I'm a twin, and a sister. And after high school in Mesa, Arizona, I went to University of California, Santa Barbara. I studied economics. During one of those years, I was able to study at the University of Sydney. Again, economics. I also took some time to travel in the South Pacific, which was fun. Surfing, exploring, going to New Zealand, going to different countries in the South Pacific, and it was a great time in my life. I then graduated from college. I went to law school at the University of San Diego. After I graduated from the University of San Diego, I went with what I describe as a firm that prosecutes securities fraud cases on the civil side. So if an investor lost money in the public or private markets, they would hire our law firm to get back the funds due to corporate malfeasance. Through that career, I ended up, what was very, I think, satisfying about the career is I represented a lot of public pension plans, educational plans, firefighters plans, pension plans, police pension plans. So hardworking people who, unfortunately, their pensions were impacted by fraud. Securities fraud is where our focus was. So it was very satisfying to pursue those cases, return money back to those public pension funds, which people had basically spent 20, 30 years saving their money and their pensions, and were dependent upon that for retirement. And pursuing those cases and returning funds to those public pension funds that allowed them to maintain a healthy balance. So I also really enjoyed the camaraderie of our law firm. I was with Bernstein, Litowitz, Berger, and Grossman for most of my career. I practiced with some of, I think, the top lawyers in the country. My adversaries were some of the best lawyers in the country, and I think that really raised my game. I was forced to. Certainly didn't start off as the lawyer that I ended up being, and a lot of that was just through the mentoring that I had at my law firm, also the opportunities to practice before some of the before the federal courts, which is a very formal process. And so it was a terrific career. I had the honor of being California's Trial Lawyer of the Year before I was 40 years old. I was able to return billions of dollars to defrauded investors. And I look back on it and think about just how fortunate I was to have that opportunity. So that's from my education to my professional career before we pursued LucidWild. I took a couple years after my tenure at Bernstein Litowitz, and I just took some time off to decompress and spend it with the family. Kids are still in high school. I had some kids playing college sports. So that was really a great time, but I also realized it was, I think you go through that stage of your career where, I sometimes refer to the mercenary stage where you work hard, you make money, and that's a great stage. But then on the backside of that, you sometimes look for different passions you have, things that are meaningful. How do you want to leave a legacy? What really moves you and makes you more grounded. I think that's what led us to this wine project at LucidWild.
How'd the two of you meet?
I was living in Chicago at the time. I had just been back from living in California for a few years. And my mom said, let's go to Las Vegas. She had a conference there. It was Valentine's Day weekend. And I joined her. And she called up a family friend who was one of my best friends when I lived in California. And his name was Jay. And Jay was good friends with Blair, but in the 2 years I lived in California, hanging out with Jay, I never met Blair. So fast forward to my mom said, let's go to Vegas. By the way, I called up Jay. Jay's gonna, join us in Vegas. And Blair has a whole long story about how Jay got him to come to Vegas because he didn't think it sounded really fun to go to a family reunion in Las Vegas. So Jay, I guess, bribed you, or not bribed you, but encouraged you like, hey, I'll pay for your hotel, I'll drive you up there, we'll play a round of golf, and you don't have to do the family reunion thing. But somehow at the last minute, Jay talked him into, just come on over and just, meet my good friend and her mom. And sure enough, Blair walked over, we met, and I don't think we separated from the weekend. And so we had this long distance relationship, Chicago to California, for almost a year. And then it was, where do we live? Chicago, California. I had lived in California for a couple of years, loved it. And so that was an easy decision. Plus I couldn't pull him away from the golf and the surf. That really wasn't easily accessible in Chicago. So how is that for a short story?
That's a great short story. And for someone from Arizona, and then I'm in California, my blood ran a little warm. So the thought of living in Chicago, even though I absolutely love the city, I love the people, I didn't know if I could survive the winters. So luckily she was amenable to living in San Diego. Which it was great. It was a wonderful place to raise our family.
And I was so fortunate to be able to continue my career. I was actually prepared to make a career change. And I talked to our president of the company, and it was very fortunate that he was like, well, just live in California and we'll make it work. And so I moved my marketing team, and and I was able to work out of California. So
it's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, you took us through kind of the wine growth for the two of you. So tell me about starting to develop your palate and starting to develop your wine education. At what point did wine become something that you thought of as more than a hobby? At what point did it become something where you thought something like this might be in the cards? Yeah,
I never really loved to read. It was something I did in my free time. And once we had this experimental vineyard at our house down there, I found myself reading until like 1 or 2 in the morning about soil and viticulture and pruning and things I never thought I'd be reading about. And I was loving it. I was just being very immersive in all the different aspects, winemaking, and everything I'd pick up, I'd be absorbing. I just found it fascinating. And I think at that moment I realized this was more than a hobby. This is something I really loved. It's something I really wanted to pursue. I loved the chemistry behind the winemaking. I really loved the labor behind the farming. That was neat. Because of my career was as an attorney was mainly transactional, I thought that crafting something would be a really neat thing to do. Making something that not only that we could enjoy, but that we could share with others would be a really, really neat thing to be able to do, and how to go about doing that in a way that we thought was the best way to do it. And so reading these and thinking about if I were to do this, or we were to do this, which we have, which has been wonderful, how would we, what techniques would we use? Because there's many ways to do every step in this process. There's many ways to prune. There's many ways to do canopy management. There's many ways to, whether you irrigate or not irrigate. There's so many decisions you make when it comes to farming, and then there's so many decisions when it comes to winemaking, and so many decisions about when you bring your wine to market. So there's just all of these decisions, and I love the fact that, as part of this journey, you can really personalize it as to what you want. And what you want to develop and what you want the end product to be. And so that really, really fascinated me.
So tell me a little bit about the backyard vineyard, about that foray. What did you plant? What did you do to it? And what was exciting about it for you?
Well, we started, which I thought was brilliant, that Blair was like, well, if we're going to put a vineyard here, we were in California at the time, obviously, water is a big issue. We had some land that we had no idea what to do with. It was a sloped area of our backyard. And so Blair brought in a soil expert to test the soil. And of course, we realized you can't just grow a grape you like, you've got to grow the best grape that is meant to be grown in that area. So he had the soil tested, and we came up with a decision to plant half Sangiovese and half Merlot. And we blended those together on site and for a Tuscan blend. And we just used our name, Nicholas Family Vineyard, for the name of our wine. And we put on our little label, a little California oak tree that sits center of our property as our kind of logo. So that is what we grew. And like Blair mentioned earlier, the fun part of that was just watching it throughout the year. It's right as we drive up the driveway, and you just see it everywhere you go, and but bringing everybody together for harvest. And sometimes that was last minute. We've had a few years where Blair was traveling for work, and he would say, go check the bricks, and we checked the bricks, and he's like, we got to harvest tomorrow. And I would literally send the text message out to 12 girlfriends, and 10, if not 12 of them would show up, and we would have a harvest. But most of the time it was, our kids would jump out there and help out. And so that is might probably have more to add to that.
No, I think that's a really, really good description, but just that whole process of taking the reading and everything and applying it to an actual vineyard, and knowing it was a small production, knowing it wasn't going to be commercial, but knowing it's almost like bringing the classroom to your backyard. And so you're studying about it, but you're also able to apply it and see what the impact of that is.
What were some of the biggest lessons in having a vineyard?
The biggest lessons of having a vineyard, I think that if you add water to a vineyard that you don't need to add water to, it dilutes the structure, flavor of your grapes. I think there's this natural tendency to want to irrigate everything, thinking water makes plants grow. But when it comes to vines, it's you want the vines to struggle. And so the more a vine can struggle with, of course, not compromising the growth of the vine and the fruit on the vine, the better the grapes are going to be. And also, you go to a backyard garden, people use amendments and fertilizer, and that's great for tomatoes and but you don't want to do that to a vineyard, because otherwise you're going to end up with this very leafy canopy, and you're going to end up with grapes that are pretty flavorless. And so it's getting that balance between allowing that vine to struggle in such a way that you're able to produce structured, balanced wines. And I think that was a big lesson as the different things you would do to create that balance in the grapes.
So tell me about the first time you made wine.
Yeah, the first time we made wine. Well,
2014.
2014. I remember I checked the bricks way more than I needed to, because for some reason I thought the bricks would spike overnight by multiple points, but usually it's a very gradual spike in the sugar levels and a gradual decrease in acidity levels. But I was, I think I tested every day for like 60 days, and I probably could have done it probably for 10 days. But I didn't know what the patterns were going to be. I was learning. And so definitely very, very into the weather patterns, looking at the weather every day. And when you don't know exactly what you're doing, but you've read a lot about it, it's almost like caring for a young child that you've never taken care of before, because it's all new. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was probably.
And I couldn't understand when we were actually harvesting. It was like, someone just dropped to the ground, and, Blair would look around like, do I keep it? Do I not keep it? That was the hardest decision. And then, of course, we later learned, a couple of years later, we started dropping grapes. Mm-hmm. And then that was a hard thing to understand when Blair would go through and I'm not sure the proper word, but he would cut out some grapes just so, we all know that just makes for a better wine. And I was like, that just seems so wasteful to be dropping all these grapes on the ground. But I soon learned as we tasted our wine, and each year I think it got a little bit better. But even that first year we were surprised by how good that first year turned out. Being that, because we weren't sure, was it going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And I think we were at that 3-year mark when we had our first vintage. So.
I will remember, going through that process of planting it, waiting a few years before our first harvest, harvesting it, having it in the barrels, and then when it first went into the bottle with our label on it, and we were able to take it home and crack basically uncork it and drink it. It's a really neat moment, because that's it's a four-year journey before you can even really enjoy, before you can enjoy our first wine.
Right.
And there's a lot of labor behind that. There's a lot of learning behind that. But there's also a lot of love and caretaking that goes into farming a vineyard. And when you're able to enjoy the fruits of those, literally enjoy the fruits of that labor and taste the fruits of that labor, it's a neat experience. It's a really neat experience. It's different than when I would go to the wine store and buy a bottle and uncork it and drink it. There's a lot. We both would look at each other and just think about all the things that we went through to basically produce what was in that bottle. So that was a really neat moment, I have to say.
You talked earlier about your kind of first experience in Oregon being an IPNC. So tell me about that first IPNC. What were your impressions of Oregon, the people making wine here, and the wines themselves?
We came with 2 other friends, and one being our close friends and neighbors, Molly and Thomas, the others being Blair's sister, Lisa, and her husband, Brad. They were into wines much earlier than us, and I would probably say were one of the first people to introduce us to some nicer wines. And so the 6 of us came out here not knowing what to expect at all. We've heard some things about IPNC, and so we're very excited to stay. We chose not to stay in Linfield College. We did get a little bit of information that a couple or 3 couples, it would be a little difficult to share a space. Let's put it that way. Nothing against the college itself. So we chose a bed and breakfast that we still talk about to this day. We were in a bed and breakfast with different themed rooms. Our friends were in a African themed room with stuffed animals and big giraffes and big gorillas. We were in the doily room that had doilies and big windows and a shower curtain that only came up to our shoulder, and you'd look over the shower curtain while you're in the shower. And so it was just a funny experience just from that standpoint, but created so many memories. I mean, going to the ice cream shop where they had Elvis, the monkey. He was, yes. And so we in fact, years later, fast forward when we came, when we were looking at different vineyards, we stopped in there and had a burger. Elvis was not there because it was COVID. So that was 2020, the end of 2020. So Elvis had left the building. So anyway, back to IPNC. So it was a great experience from where we stayed, the funny stories, and walking to the experiences. Blair mentioned the Momtazi experience and blending wines. Sitting down, I remember we sat down for the first lunch, again, not having attended before, we had no idea. And I remember everything from that breakfast experience where we were talking about wines and, the education. But then the next day when we had this lunch and there was 10 of us at a table and they put a half a bottle of wine down and they start pouring around a little bit to everyone's glass. And I'm looking around like, this isn't going to last very long. And then 5 minutes later, another bottle gets on our table, and then whoever's empty gets a little bit of a taste. And within 30 minutes, I think we had 15 bottles of wine on the table. And we're like, oh, now we get it. Because people would come over and take a bottle and then bring you another bottle. And it was all this bottle movement, the ability to taste different wines and to talk about them, and under these big, beautiful trees. It just made for an experience that was, even when it went well into the night, and the salmon bake. So we've been back several years since. Very sad to see that it's no longer around, but we definitely enjoyed our follow-up experiences. But there's nothing better than your very first IPNC experience. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just thought we learned a lot. They had some classroom sessions, which were great because we got to learn about the different processes. We got to learn a little bit about the history of the Willamette Valley. We also learned about the techniques of making Pinot Noir, creating Pinot Noir, Pinot Grigio, Chardonnay. Different varietals that are grown in Oregon. Also, I mentioned before, we got a chance to go out to the Momtazi property and blend the different clones of Pinot Noir. It's a lot of fun. So it was, I don't think I'd ever been in a situation where I started drinking at 9 a.m. and ended drinking at 9 p.m. That was a new one for me. I that wasn't on my regular schedule. So that was a bit of adjustment. But I have to say, we left after 3 days and we had learned a ton. We had met a lot of terrific people. We had a better understanding of not only how special this region is, but how great the people are. And I think one of the lasting impressions after we left IPNC was just how wonderful the wines are. This is really a special region. And as I looked at it, this region was not only up and coming, but literally the pioneers. I mean, we're kind of, the people were standing on the shoulders of these giants, that had come here and taken a real risk of planting grapes here. And by the time we had gotten here, I think it kind of shifted to that second generation who were benefiting from all of that, David Lett and Jim Marish and Cal Knutson and Dick Erath and some of those pioneers. But at the same time, many of those people were still involved. So because the region at that time, it's not that old. It doesn't go back that far. And so just very impressed with how far Oregon had come in developing such great wines in relatively a short amount of time compared to other wine regions. And I saw nothing but great promise here. And I knew that this region was going to explode because I saw the passion that people were taking with the farming, with the winemaking, and not only just the farming, but the sustainable practices that they were employing, the organic practices, the regenerative practices, the commitment to leaving the land better than they found it. I saw a real commitment to that, and that's an important value that we hold to, and it was important to see that for us. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier kind of the timing was empty nest approaching, and you started thinking about a project like this, and Oregon is the draw for you. So tell me about starting to look for what you wanted to do, starting to visualize what you wanted to do. How did you find this space, and what did you sort of picture when you found it?
Yeah, so it was interesting because there's a lot of different things, processes that were new to us when we went to look for vineyard land here. You can go on the internet and you can look for vineyard land online, and they have different sites that you can see different properties, which are, some of the properties are great, but what you recognize very quickly is if there's a place with a very established wine club, a very established reputation, they're rarely publicly listed because of their business. And if they're for sale, that could diminish the value of their current business, their sustainability, their wine club, people visiting, because people want to have a connection to a vineyard. So what we soon found out is what we saw online were not the only properties that were available to be purchased. And there happens to be, I think you can call pocket listings, you can call them listings that are not public, but there's a number of realtors that specialize in this area that the vintners go to list their property off market. And so we learned, the group of those realtors we ended up working with Laura Picard and Tina Jacobson. And they brought us a list of properties that were not public, in addition to some of the ones that were public that we had identified. And we started to do a road trip out to these different places. None of those places, I think the list was maybe at that time maybe 15 wineries, and Willamette Valley stretches for over 100 miles, and so it was a big area to cover. None of those properties are in the Dundee Hills. And we weren't sure exactly where we wanted to be. We were just learning about the region. So we went on these different trips. We checked out these different wineries, and it came to a point where our realtor suggested that we, there's an individual in the Dundee Hills, Stephen Whiteside, who has an unbelievable vineyard in Dundee. It's very special. He's also a tremendous farmer. And in addition to that, he might be a good resource to help us in this due diligence process that we're doing on these different vineyards that we're looking at. And we really absorbed all the information and help that we could get from whether it's result partners on the farming end or financial analysis, the health of different vineyards. So we took up that offer to come up here and meet with Stephen. And they were, Stephen, the minute we walked into his home / tasting room, he was just so warm, so welcoming. He immediately offered us wine. The wines were beautiful. The vineyards was Belvita at that time. Stephen Whiteside owned Belvita. And we got to chat about everything, what he was doing at this property, how he had attained it, his farming practices, the different properties we were looking at, the pros, the cons. And as we talked, he invited LJ and I to dinner, just to stay for dinner. I think he had a pot roast in the oven, typical Oregonian hospitality, like, would you like to stay? And we, of course, had nowhere else to go, so we were happy to say yes. And we stayed for dinner, we shared wine, we talked about the different properties we were looking at. And his only question is, what are you doing tomorrow? And we said, well, we're looking at different vineyards and different sites. And so we went out on that road trip, and I think he called that next afternoon and said, do you have any plans tonight? We have another dinner here at the house. Do you want to come up and join us? And we said, yeah, that's great. I mean, we love the property. We really had a nice dinner. We'll go back up there and meet with them. And over that second dinner, we went through this, it was like rinse and repeat. We had wine, we had a great dinner, we looked over the properties, and I remember him looking at us and saying, well, we've talked about a lot of properties, what do you plan to do? And I said, well, Stephen, to be honest with you, I'd like to buy this. And he said, well, it's not exactly for sale. And I remember there's a long pregnant pause, and he says, well, what would I do? And I said, well, it's just the two of us. We're not, we'd love for you to help us with the project. We need nothing but help. I mean, this is new to us. So We would love for you to stay involved. He knew everything, every inch of this vineyard. He had farmed it so intentionally and beautifully over the course of over 20 years. And Steve said he'd give it some thought. And over the course of the next 3 weeks, we had, I think, maybe just 2 discussions about perhaps his desire to do another project or to travel, and we had bought ourselves a pretty big job.
It was a very quick turnaround. I think we started looking at vineyards in September of 2020, and we closed on this vineyard January of 2021. So it was a very quick process. I like to say, when you know what you love, and I think we're very fortunate to find this vineyard. More importantly, to find a vineyard that was so impeccably managed. And I think Stephen, when he tells his story, he was here for our grand opening and told his story, and I think he was always looking for that right family that he felt a connection with, that he felt would take care of, his land. I almost feel like crying just saying that, because it just feels so emotional. But, we had that connection, and I think he felt like, okay, now's the time. I found the right people to take it over. And for the next year, we would look out the window and there would be Stephen on his tractor driving around. We're like, we don't know what he's doing, but we're not going to stop him. And, he was very involved in everything. We just kept him up to date as to what we were planning on doing. Even when we're like, well, Stephen, you have a great house and tasting room, but we're going to kind of gut the whole thing and build something different. And he was like, you should, absolutely. He was just part of it, loved hearing the stories and loved seeing the plans. And when we looked for a spot for the tasting room, the land here was already cleared. So we didn't have to remove a vine, and it worked well. So we would even update him and show him, hey, these are the plans that we're putting together. And of course, we had a million questions about water lines and plumbing and everything going on the property. So having his involvement for that first year was critical. But it also is a friendship, a lifelong friendship that we have with Stephen, to this day, that we really respect and appreciate, and I think just helped with that whole transition to bring us to where we are.
Yeah, and
today.
to emphasize how important the community was and is. Stephen, before we finalized our deal to purchase the property, Stephen wanted us to meet the neighbors, and especially Jim Mersch and the family. So we did that, and I think that was very important for him to get their buy-in on who was going to take this property over. Even though we're far from each other, we're actually very close in what we're doing, and it's a small town, and I think it was important to Stephen that if he was to pass this property on, that the neighbors that are so important to him and had helped him in his journey would also be in favor of the next stewards of the property, which meant a lot. It really did, because this property is going to obviously it's going to outlive L.J. and I, and there's going to be another steward of it, someday. And it's important. I think you become in the short time that we've done this, you become very attached to the land. And I think if there was ever to be a switch in ownership from L.J. and I, which we don't plan on in our lifetime, we would want to make sure that the people that were to succeed us would farm it the way we'd want it farmed, would be the types of neighbors that we'd want as part of the Dundee Hills. So you become very attached to the land. You also become very, I think, attached to your neighbors, in the sense that you want to see people have the same values that Stephen had, that hopefully that we're recognized as having, and that you pass it on to people that share those values.
So you closed on the property in January of 2021. It's a very interesting time to start any business, I will add.
Yeah, yes.
So let's talk about the immediate need. What was the first thing you wanted to do the first year, and how does this start to take shape?
Oh. Well, you could start with what we had to do just those first 3 months, which was a lot.
Yeah, so Stephen had a number of wineries that had contracts on the vineyard. So we wanted to make sure we met them and understood, what those contracts entailed, where the grapes were going, how they were being utilized. We also wanted them to understand what our plans were. We really wanted to bring this property into a single vineyard estate under, at that time we didn't know what the name would be, but we wanted to bring the grapes in because these grapes are being used in some of the most prestigious wines in the valley. And we felt like it deserved its own brand, and but at the same time we didn't want to come in and basically terminate contracts. That wasn't our goal, nor did I think it would be well received. So we wanted to make sure that transition would be one that would work for us and work for them. So we had first of all, we had to get a handle on all the different contracts and reach out to all of our neighbors and, and let them understand that even though we're from California, we're good people. And we share their values, and, we're going to be good neighbors. And so I think from there, obviously, how was the vineyard going to be farmed going forward? So did a lot of meetings with result partners that had been on the vineyard for quite a while and the different options for doing that. And didn't have to make a lot of changes on that note because it was being farmed so sustainably and intentionally before we arrived. But we did have to make a decision with respect to winemakers. So we reached out to a number of prominent winemakers, and through that process, we were absolutely, impressed by Isabelle Meunier. Our meeting with Isabelle, she shares a lot of those same Burgundian philosophies and traditions in the winemaking process. Native ferments, the patient process, the minimal intervention. Obviously, before we had that meeting, she had made some of the highest ranking Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays in Oregon's history. So, she had a lot of credibility behind her as well. And just her organization, her knowledge, her expertise, we were absolutely blown away by. And she's humble at the same time. And so that was a big decision, who's going to be our winemaker, because we wanted them, based on our experience, we wanted them to share some of the same values that we had, particularly making our wine in a Burgundian style in a very native way and a minimal intervention way. And one thing that was important to us was, and I had this discussion with everyone we talked to, was, listen, our name's not going to be on the bottles. We're not going to be the star of the vineyard, but either is the winemaker. So we don't expect to have the winemaker's name on our bottles. Our name's not going to be on that. What's going to survive us all is the vineyard. And we want to make the vineyard the star. It's the land. That's what's producing. Great vineyards produce great wines. And it was important to us that it was the land that we sit on and that we farm is the star. And because it deserved it, right? And so I think for some, it might have been a bit of a surprise because the American culture kind of has a star winemaker, star chef culture. But we weren't interested in that. We were interested in a great winemaker, but we weren't interested in promoting ourselves or promoting the winemaker for that matter. We wanted to basically promote the vineyard and the great wines that come from this vineyard.
And what about this space?
Ooh, wow. Well, we had 2 projects on our hands. We knew that we were going to renovate the house / tasting room that Stephen had lived in to become our residence. And then we knew, of course, that we were going to use this space that was available for our tasting room. And so we spent the next, I would say what Blair just explained was probably the first 2 months. We had to do a lot in a very short amount of time. And so while we were getting everything settled with the property with the vineyard and managing the vineyard and the winemaking process and starting that whole thing was, okay, so we know what we want to do from a construction standpoint. So we really started focusing on experiences and what types of experiences would we want to host within our tasting room. And that is really what directed us towards designing the space and deciding how big would it be, where would it be placed, and are we going into the ground, are we utilizing the existing terrain. So I like to say at the very beginning, I didn't have a name for it. I came up with the name, or found out what the name was several years later. It was experiential design, where the experience ideas came before the design. And one of those ideas, something that we both loved, were wine caves. So when we talked about having wine caves and wanting them to be underground, where could they be underground? And the area that our tasting room sits on now was a sloped area. So we actually dug that out. So our wine caves actually are completely underground. And then we built around that. So that's where we started with figuring out where is the space going to be, what do we need to do, talking about experiences from, we want to have wine tastings, but it would also be great to have a private event, or somebody to have a special celebration for a birthday or anniversary, but not to impact your wine tasting. So a space that allows you to have wine tasting on a regular basis and private events at the same time. And that's where the different spaces started to come together. And these were just very broad strokes. And that helped us in interviewing different architects. And one of the things that I felt strongly about was creating a space that felt like a residence. And so rather than hiring an architect that was very commercially focused, we focused on architects that were that built very nice custom residential homes. So we came about finding Anacapa Architecture. They're based out of Montecito in California. What we also liked about them mostly was they also had a Portland office. So we knew we could work both with an architect that we loved his design. Dan Weber had just an eye for what we were looking for. And after our project in San Diego, I learned a lot about architecture. I learned a lot about construction. I lost both my architect and my builder, and that's a whole other story. And that's where I cut my teeth on, was learning that. So we took a lot of what I learned, we learned building our house into coming here and hiring the right architect for that project. And we did that within our first year as well. And we started the process with the architect. And once we got a little bit further along, then it was, who's our builder going to be? And we learned that bringing a builder on early would be beneficial, as far as, before we got too far down the road in a plan, in understanding any, issues that we might have with the land, or with building. How can we build it in a way that was structurally sound and beautiful? So bringing a builder on very early was important. So not only were we focusing on how to manage our vineyard in the best way, pick our winemaker, manage the contracts, decide what part of the land was going to be part of our wine, how much wine do we want to make, where are we going to make the wine? It was, who's our builder going to be, who's our architect going to be? So that was really all done within that first year. And as we also were doing that, then, of course, the business part of it was always an element. So that kind of sums up how we got started in that.
Yeah, I think that before we purchased this property, I think we both, had discussions about, if we're going to do this, we need to really showcase what's here. Otherwise, we shouldn't do it, because someone else should do it, because it deserves it. I mean, all you have to do is stand on one of these balconies and look out, and no matter where you've traveled, wine countries around the world, it's one of the most stunning. It really is one of the most stunning views of wine country that's around, and it deserved this. We didn't have to take out a single vine up at the top here to build the tasting room. It was all here. It's almost, and this road, this parking area, it was almost waiting for somebody. And the way it was cut out almost, and the vineyards go up the side and up both sides. It was almost cut out and waiting for somebody to come and showcase what's here, and allowing people to come and enjoy it. And it's not something we would have done if we weren't fully in, because this place really deserves it. And if we were going to do something different, we would have probably bought a different property because someone else should do it. And what's really neat about the project that LJ principally did on this tasting room is what she created is an indoor space, because close to half of the year you spend a lot more time inside than you do out in Oregon, right? And it just brings that outside inside, and the space really lends itself. No matter if you're inside or outside, you get to enjoy this beautiful view. It's very immersive in the vineyard, and the tasting room's right up, hovering at 800 feet over a vineyard that starts at 600 feet and goes up 800 feet. It's absolutely stunning, and I think LJ did a really good job just capturing the essence of what LucidWild is. The vineyard, we're a single vineyard estate. You can pretty much see our entire estate. We don't have any ambitions to be larger than this. This is plenty for us. I tell LJ all the time, I think I have 25 good summers left, and this is enough. We're gonna have fun. We have enough to do here over that time, and in order to have the balance between having fun, doing it responsibly, making great wines, and enjoying this and sharing it with others, this is great. And LJ did a really, really admirable job putting it together, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what are the biggest challenges of an undertaking like this?
I would say probably the biggest challenge is managing your architect, managing your builder, and also ensuring that you're achieving the result that you want. So you can come up with a great design, you can have it pictured in your head, but getting it actually built to the way that you envisioned it is the toughest part. And I think we succeeded. I would say at the very beginning, we were doing so many different things, and Blair and I were both involved in every little decision, every interview, every person we hired to be part of our team. And then we realized that this was a major project, so we had to divide and conquer. So Blair really took over everything that came to managing the vineyard and the winemaking and all those meetings and details, and I took over the construction side of it. But we would update each other every night. It's like, okay, what did you talk about? What did I talk about? This is what we're doing. So I can't say I made any decision in this space that Blair was not a part of. I like to think that probably I wasn't as involved on the wine side, but I tried to be as involved as I could, because this was just such a big undertaking, and for some crazy reason we decided to do it ourselves. We didn't bring in a designer, we didn't bring in a project manager, we didn't bring in somebody to procure the furnishings. We just said, well, we could do that, we could do that, we could do that. And there was days when I was not sure I could do that. And Blair said, hey, you've got this, we can do this, just trust yourself. And with his support and his patience, and we just kind of plugged along, and really found a great working relationship with our builder and with our architect, and with the subs. And whether or not they liked me on site every day to manage every little thing, I felt like I needed to be here all the time, just because I continually made changes, perfected things, and really wanted everybody to feel like they were part of a really big and exciting project that was coming to the Valley. So I felt like our relationship with everyone that we worked with, from our builder and our architect and their subs, was very important, because I wanted everybody to feel proud of what they built here, and that led into using products and materials that were local. I mean, even when we hired our builder, it was important to us. His office is right down the street. Could almost throw a rock at his building, but we wanted to use a local builder, so that was in part important to us. So I think bringing everyone together, and making it come to where we're at. I look back on all those challenges, and everything was worth it. Every tear, every frustration, anytime I would scream at the top of my legs and just say, I can't do this anymore, it was all worth it.
Those are all the challenges. I think some of the biggest challenges were that we had never done a project in a rural community. And so there's a lot of unexpected unknowns that we learned about. That if anyone is listening to this or does a project in a rural area, it's important to know about in advance, which we learned about after we had purchased the property. But some of those things are, you're on well water, right? How much water do you have? Is it used for domestic use? Is it used for commercial use? We're lucky here because we pump at like 45 gallons a minute, but some of the properties I looked at pumped at 5 to 10, and they have to bring in water, and they don't really have an ability to build another structure because that water's not available. Water's a big thing out here because you get what nature provides you on your property, and how are you going to utilize that? That's what is a scarce resource. Also, if you build a structure in today's day and age, you have fire suppression. And we were very, very surprised what goes into a fire suppression system. Mm-hmm. So if you build especially a commercial project, I don't think this necessarily applies to a residential, but commercial project, you either have to build a very large reservoir, you have to have a space for a reservoir to draw upon, or you have to have an above ground water container, which can be massive, huge, and unsightly in some certain instances. Yeah. Or you can do what we did and basically bury swimming pools underneath the ground, which are cement, in our case, cement basically
3,000 gallon.
3,000 gallon tanks that are underneath this, that are dug in, the tanks are dropped, but not only the tanks, and they fill by the well, they have to be constantly pressurized. So you have machinery that here, we have an industrial size service room that basically keeps the water in those tanks pressurized, and then you have an entire sprinkler system.
I like to say we could put out fires maybe about a mile away. Like any of our neighbors, we could help.
Yeah, it's definitely fireproof, and even I'm not exactly sure. We even have sprinklers in a cement cave. So but it's for everyone's safety, and we understand that. But it's an unknown. Septic. I didn't even know really what septic was. Septic's major. Especially if you have a vineyard, where's that septic going to go? I mean, we didn't want it to drain into the vineyard for obvious reasons, and you have to have a location for that, and you have to set that aside. And plumbing is a different issue than being on public sewer system.
Electrical.
We had to bring. Luckily, we have a neighbor that on a road half a mile over had strung higher electrical lines that we were able to bring to our property, but trenching power to your property and bringing sufficient power to the property, because typically if you build a commercial project next to a residential or just a residential, you have to bring power in, and that's not an easy feat. You talk about data. So there wasn't a data provider here. Starlink was fairly new, but Starlink even today for a commercial project can be intermittent, even though it's a fantastic solution for rural properties. So we're bringing in fiber optic from the road, and so we were one of the first. We got together with some other neighbors, and no fiber company would invest in a rural area unless they have some mass in order to get back their investment. In order for them to get back their investment, to bring fiber to your property and to have a monthly plan is something that I never anticipated, the amount of that and the work involved.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just bringing up a few of the things that if someone's listening to this and considering a project, not to dissuade them from doing it, but to bring up some of the unknowns, that if you come from a more, I guess, I wouldn't say I was necessarily from a metropolitan place, but I was from a city with all those services provided relatively easy to hook into. When you come to a rural property, there's a lot of things you need to consider. Then there's a lot of limitations on what you might be able to do that are worth checking out, and it can be a major expense. I mean, I would say a quarter of the construction cost of these projects is underground, whether it's septic, power, electricity, and so a lot of it's underground. So that was not having built anything in a rural area. Those came as a surprise.
So it wasn't one surprise, it was many surprises.
Well, the next giant winery project you do, you'll be prepared for it, then, I guess you're saying.
There will not be.
This is it.
There will
This
not.
is it.
There will not be another one. We are very happy here, and like
We need to enjoy this for many, many years to come.
That's nice of you to think of us.
So now that you're open and open to the public, tell me about the highlights for you and sort of the biggest offerings. What are the experiences here? What are the amenities here? What are you most excited about?
So as far as the amenities, and I'll let Blair talk about the experiences so you don't hear from me too much, but the amenities here, we're a 15,000 square foot building. We're on 2 levels. And as I said about the caves, we dug back into the ground in order to get the caves underground. So our sky terraces, we consider the name for our top floor. And our top floor, where we're sitting right now in our living room, we've named each area to allow us to reference that with people that are visiting, also with our staff. So we are in what's called the living room. And I like to say, I want you to feel when you walk into our living room like you walked into our house. So our living room here is set up with lounge seating, comfortable seating. Every table is custom made to allow for that perfect height in setting down your wine glass. And with the expansive, here we're in about 12-foot ceilings, or 11 feet, excuse me, here with the glass that opens up, so you have this indoor-outdoor space out onto the terrace. We have our store where we sell some items that are related to what we're doing here on property. And then we have a phenomenal entry, which you just have to come and see. We have a 6,000-pound piece of basalt rock that sits in our entry and acts as our entry desk, and that's our nod to the Jory soil. Basalt rock being volcanic rock. Once iron is introduced to basalt, it turns red, and that explains our Jory soil. So we thought it was it was a perfect complement to the land to bring in this big piece of basalt, which I like to say weighs the same amount as my car. And so structurally, our structural engineer was challenged with making sure that we could handle not only placing it, but bringing it into the space as well. And our other half of our top floor is our Sky Lounge. And that also has a beautiful terrace, and that is actually the part of our building that's cantilevered over our vineyard. In there we have another indoor-outdoor feel with the opening glass doors. We have 14-foot ceilings there. We have a 165-inch video wall that projects our videos and images from our vineyard. It's also a great space that allows us to bring in different people that we can do presentations or host a game or host something, but while you're standing in there, you just have this 270-degree view of the vineyards, our vineyard and the vineyards around us. We've got this like hanging fireplace that just warms up the space. So that's our top floor. And then when you go downstairs, you have this open staircase that leads to these, 30-foot glass walls. So you have this magnificent view, right? When you walk in, you look out over the stairs, and it's just nothing but glass out to the vineyard. And that leads down to 4 different areas. We have our rec room, which is our game room that is, I have to say, probably one of the highlights of the space. Allows for bottle service down there, where you have your billiard table, a foosball, shuffleboard, outdoor ping pong, our bocce ball court. Also, everything is very much intentional and thought through. I mean, I love our steel-clad billiard table, but when we were doing the bocce ball court, we're like, well, where does bocce come from? Italians. What do Italians use for their bocce ball court? Well, they use oyster shells. So we brought in oyster shells to be the foundation for our bocce ball court. Again, a 2-sided fireplace in there, seating areas, so you could really enjoy playing games, relaxing, drinking wine. Another part of our space is our Idea Lab, and that is a boardroom style space that can be utilized for a meeting. It flows right out to our vineyard, and there's space out there whether your meeting continues to a lunch, and we have space outside for a lunch or inside there. Again, another TV to allow for whoever's hosting a meeting to utilize that for their meeting. And of course, I mentioned our wine caves. That is accessible from the lower level, and just two extensions of the wine cave. One is our barrel room that is just lined with barrels. We have a beautiful table that allows for 40 people to sit at that table. And the other extension of our wine cave we have used before for another 30 people to sit, again, in custom-made tables that we keep on site, so we can provide an experience at a very quick notice. We're not renting things, we have everything here. And that other part of the cave leads to our magnum room, and our magnum room houses all of our magnums. And we have a lounge area that just has a wall of bottles and just, two leather couches and cozy chairs and a petrified wood cocktail table that just allows for a unique experience in the cave, as well as another part of our cave where you can have a full dining or wine tasting experience, because it's a 12-foot table, comfortable chairs. The lighting is just spectacular. When we brought in lighting from Ochre that is hand-blown glass, reminds us of raindrops, the importance of rain, and so that's our cave. And one final area is our speakeasy, and it's called Jellies, because inside of Jellies is a jelly tank, and you kind of have to see it to experience it. I'm not sure I can explain it to, I'd like to say you just have to come and see it, but in there is a beautiful jelly tank. We also have vinyl records, a collection that my sister provided, and it's a 30-year record collection. We go back into the 40s. A big part of the 80s and 90s are in there, so it's in a place where you can spin records, sit back, listen to great music, look at the jellies, and it's just tucked away in a little secret spot downstairs. So that is our building and experiences.
Experiences.
Yeah, I think our goal is because we're a single vineyard estate, we don't source grapes. The farming's done here. We're all hand sorted, hand farmed, hand selected. So we wanted to make sure that people that came here really had a connection to LucidWild. And so we wanted to build connections with the land and have people come up here and really feel like they're connected to our property. And how do we go about that? Well, the nice thing is, if you come in for a tasting, we have a map and you can see where each glass of wine comes from on the property, which blocks. And we have a vineyard tour. We bring people into the different blocks, so they're actually holding a glass of wine. We can tell them where those different, where that wine came from, the different blocks, the different clones. So that's nice, because in a single vineyard estate like this, people can go, they can see the soil, they can see the vines, they can taste the grapes, the ripening. So it gives you this connection to the land. We also have a sheep program. The sheep are intended here to not only be just add some biodiversity to the property, but also, we wanted to make sure we reduced our carbon footprint in here. We wanted to make sure we got the sheep into the vineyard. And they're Valley Black-nosed sheep from Swiss Alps. They're beautiful. They have black faces. They're beautiful white coats. Their demeanor's like a golden retriever. They're just so docile and so nice. And we have two barns. We have a ram barn. You only need one ram. That's Bravado. Bravado's a big, hulking 300-pound ram, and he's with what's called the Weather, which is a castrated male, his buddy, and that's Wingman. So Wingman and Bravado are at the ram barn, and they're kind of on their own program. We don't bring visitors into the ram barn. Bravado's very nice, but he's a ram. And so it's just better off that we let Bravado, we go in there, we brush Bravado, we feed Bravado, but Bravado's on his own program. He goes high, he goes low. He sometimes will ram a bucket, just for fun. So Bravado sits up there for most of the year, for a month and a half, starting in the fall. Bring him down to the ewe barn, and then our lambing program will start in the spring. So we'll have lambs in the spring. We have 9 ewes. They're down at the ewe barn, and they're beautiful. And we have a llama at each barn, the territorial llamas, that a local by the name of Ken Austin's been in the area for a very long time, happens to be one of the owners of the Allison Hotel, but he has raised llamas for many, many years and shown llamas. And so no better place to get your llamas from than Ken Austin. So we have these llamas, we have these sheep. We also have a bee project. So we have honeybees on property. We have 6 boxes. And I find honeybees to be absolutely extraordinary in their social organization, their tasks, the way they organize the hive, not to mention it produces beautiful honey. So we had our first honey harvest, and we share the honey in the tasting room, which is really nice. So eventually we'll have our Valley Black-Nosed sheep right in front of the tasting room, either on the green lawn or in the vineyard, and people are tasting the honey. So when we talk about experiences, what I like to think of is between the wine, the animals, between taking the vineyard tour, people come up here and really feel a connection to LucidWild. Very different from just buying a wine on a grocery store shelf. So I think our experience, maybe the experiences I remember the most are the wineries that I went to. I actually was in the land, and so whenever I grab that bottle, it's not just drinking the wine, it brings back all those memories of the places that LJ and I went to. That experience, what we talked about, what we learned, that moment of our life, right? We've been drinking wine for 30 years now together, somewhere around there, 25, 30 years. And when I've been to a place and I pick up those bottles, it just seems to be that much more meaningful, because I feel like I have a connection to those places. And so I really wanted people, when they drink that's why we don't at the moment distribute. I don't know if that'll change in the future, but we don't have plans to distribute. We want to be direct to consumer. And the reason for that is we really want people to have a connection to LucidWild. The people that are enjoying our wine have a connection to us, and to us, to the vineyard, to what we're doing here, also to our ideals and values. We set aside 25% of the property for natural wildlife, which we think is important to coexist with nature for biodiversity purposes. So we have, as you look out here, we have hawks, we have owls, we have coyotes, we have deer. So we have this great biodiversity, and it makes me happy when I go outside and I see nature, interacting with what we're doing on the farmland. So it's really nice in that sense. And another thing, I think people feel a connection when they're here to the property. They feel a connection not only to the wine and what we're doing here, but also to the wildlife, which is a nice feeling when you're sitting in a commercial space. So it's just that connection. We really want to build that connection because, like I said, this is a family-owned winery. This isn't a corporation, and we're doing this because we want to make those connections. We want to make the connections with people. We also want people to be connected to LucidWild.
Yeah, and I think when we like to share that with people when they come in for their experience, and our wine tasting experience right now includes tasting through our 5 wines from our sparkling Chardonnay, 3 different Pinots. We also have a full-time chef on property, and he serves 5 bites with each of our wines. And those are presented by our staff as pairing with each of the wines. And I think that's a little surprise. Not everybody knows that when they come in, that it's not meant to be a meal, but it's really meant to really just open up your taste buds and really enjoy the wines that much more by having something to go along with it. And so we'll be adding some other elements to that in the very near future. But having a full-time chef here also allows us to, I mentioned earlier, having private experiences for people, or private events, I should say. So whether it's a board meeting and then they want to stay for a lunch, they could do that. They could reserve a specific space. Upstairs, we're primarily doing our tastings. After our tastings, we bring people downstairs so they can see our whole building. We like to share with everybody what we've done here. And then we bring them into our wine cave to, I'll let Blair talk about what we do at our wine cave. But we have a different experience down there. And yeah, and then beyond that is being able to expand that to the outside areas as well, like the vineyard tour or hosting an outdoor event. And so we like to say that you can come here 7 days a week and have a different experience. We want people to be very involved, to come the first time, see what we have to offer, but come back again. And if it's just bottle service that you want, and you want to sit in the cave, or you want to hang out in our rec room, that's definitely an option to do. And I think that's a fun part, but I'll let you talk about the cave experience.
Yeah, just to back up a little bit, but on the culinary experience, we like to integrate what's on the property. So we use the honey, we use the blackberries in our tasting experience. In our charcuterie board, we use the figs. We have cherries on property; those have been integrated too. So we like to take what we have on the property and utilize it. And again, it's just feeling that connection to the property, using what we have here that Mother Nature's given us, not just the grapes, but it's given us a bounty of other things too. And we want to make use of that. And it's kind of, again, goes back to that coexisting with what we're doing here. As for the cave experience, we wanted to do a tasting experience, barrel tasting, because it's interactive and people enjoy it. And in our wine tasting experience, we enjoyed it too. But the one thing that's difficult about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is if you oxidize that wine, you spoil it very quickly because it's so delicate. So tasting experience with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is kind of out. So what did we do? We found we were able to source a couple barrels of port style, I should say. Port being exclusively used by Porto, but we sourced some grapes from the Rogue Valley. Those were made into port and barreled. And what we did is we took a full barrel of port. We have a 2017 and a 2019, and we basically re-barreled those in half barrels and bottled the other half that we could. So if somebody really enjoyed their barrel tasting of the Ruby Port or the Tawny Port, the 2019, they could take a bottle with them if they wanted to purchase something like that, kind of a memory. So it's off-brand. It's not on our website. It's nothing that we advertise, but it's a delicious way to end your tasting experience. We pair those with chocolates from Cloud Forest. Cloud Forest in Portland. There's an Ecuadorian, Sebastian, who has a similar approach to being a chocolatier as we do as being winemakers. He's very intentional. He has single estate cacao areas that he harvests his grapes in Ecuador. He also, there's opportunities for him to actually harvest wild cacao in the Amazon. So he has developed this Cloud Forest chocolates. It's very, it's boutique. And it's very intentional the way we do our wines. And I remember we met with Sebastian and talked to him about pairing the chocolates with the port. I think he asked us more questions than we asked him. And I was kind of wondering who was buying the chocolate. And but it really impressed me because he was asking questions about how was this going to be used and what kind of circumstances. He didn't want what he is very tied to, his chocolates, to be used in a setting that wasn't going to be appreciated. And we assured him that there would be a presentation on his chocolates every time they were served, which there is. So you have your port, you're told about the chocolate that you're going to have with the port, how that changes your palate with respect to the chocolate and port. So it's a neat experience, and it's in one of those experiences too that's immersive. It gives people a chance to see our entire our facility here, our tasting room, the sky terraces and wine caves, and they get to move around. I mean, what we've noticed is a lot of the younger generations of wine tasters, they like to sit for a tasting, but they also like to be more interactive. They want to go in the game room, they want to go in the barrel room, they want to go outside, they want to listen to music. Just sitting there and tasting is great, but they also want more interactive experiences. And so at LucidWild, we're trying to provide those experiences for them in an authentic way.
Why LucidWild?
Yeah, so LucidWild, I think it really describes what our experience has been. So when we were thinking about names, in both of our careers, LJ and I are very intentional, very prepared. It's all about preparation. It's all about being lucid in our approach. And I think it served us very well in our professional careers. We try to bring that same lucid thinking to the wine world and realize very quickly that it is wild. It's wild, and no matter how lucid you are, it's a wild experience because you have Mother Nature on the farming side, right? You've got a living organism in a bottle or in a barrel or in the fermenting tanks. And so many things can happen in that process that are just absolutely wild. And you can be as lucid and as intentional as you want, but it's wild. So putting those two terms together, we felt like the juxtapose between being lucid, which we really is kind of like our foundation to probably why we were able to come up here and do this project, doesn't necessarily apply to this next chapter, which is wild. And so you have this lucid wild experience, and it reminds us every day that sometimes you just have to go with it. And you have to go with what Mother Nature brings you. And no matter how prepared you are, no matter how lucid you are, you have to accept that it's going to be wild. Right. And so that's the genesis of the LucidWild name, is putting those two things together, which I think really explains our journey. Yeah.
And the personal side to it too. We were like, it's kind of our personal side too. Lucid, you raise a family, you do things, and then, but we also like the wild side too. You put our hair down and just have a good time. Mm-hmm. So several different interpretations, but I think you nailed it. Yeah.
What's next for the two of you, either personally or professionally? What have you not done here yet that you want to do, and what are you looking forward to?
I think the biggest surprise and the greatest thing that's come out of this is, which I don't think when you have your head down and you're working to create it, is the people that we've met. The opportunity this gives us on a daily basis is to interact with 25, 50, 75 people a day who, and the people that drink wine, they do very interesting things. I've figured out very quickly. A lot of them are very well traveled. A lot of them are very well read. A lot of them have done very interesting things in their life. And when they come up here, it's great. There's a lot of storytelling. And we've met some people that I don't know how I would have ever met or heard their story had we not done this. And it's great. And having been an attorney, often you don't meet people in the best of circumstances. And in owning a winery and owning a tasting room, people come up here and they're in great spirits. They're looking to have fun. It's escapism, right? There's just the reason you go out to. Everyone could eat at home every night, but we go out to dinner because it's a different, and you want to have a different change of pace and a different scenery. So, I think it's really been nice to meet such interesting people, to hear their story, and because this is kind of after our first professional career, we're very interested in what other people have done and where their journeys have taken them and their kids and things like that. So I've just thoroughly enjoyed, and it was unanticipated, not because I didn't think I'd meet people, but I guess I just didn't know what that would feel like. But it's really nice. It's really nice. It's really expanded our social circle a lot, and we now, if we can find the time, we have a lot of people to visit now who want us to, want to reciprocate and have us visit their projects, whether they're doing. Some people are farmers in different areas. Some people are, live in different countries and have invited us. So, I think it's very fulfilling at this stage of our career to meet so many interesting people that provide us with these different experiences.
Yeah, and we're really fortunate that we have a house right next door. Our commute is about 100 feet, and that allows us to be very present, and that is our intention and our plan, is to be here, be able to hear these stories and meet people and let people, hear our story. And it's an experience that's so rewarding for both sides. We've put together a phenomenal team that I have to say every morning I get up and I look forward to working side by side with the team that we've put together. And so I'd like to say our plan is to be here on site. But like Blair said, we're of course going to sneak away here and there. I'm most excited about, now that we've built, the building is complete, our business is up and running, is sneaking away at those little times to explore more of Oregon. Like I said originally, we're both very outdoorsy and we love to hike and bike and just see new places. And so we've just started feeling like we can get away for a day. So our goal is to do a different hike every week. And we've started doing that just 2 weeks ago. So it's very new. And I just look forward to, again, like Blair said, meeting the different people that come here to really enjoy our wines and enjoy their experience here at LucidWild.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I think the people that we have on our team too, some of them come from an engineering job, and some of them come from other careers. They could be doing many different things, but they choose this profession, and they choose it because they love the environment. They love being around the wine. They love the land, and you meet people that are really could be doing so many different things. And they choose to be doing this, and there's a real passion behind it. I'm not so sure people necessarily get into this, for any other reason besides the love of being around vineyards and being around wine, and it's neat to see that, because there's a lot of extremely talented people who could be doing a lot of different things that choose to be here in Dundee, and we thoroughly have enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
So Blair, you mentioned earlier 25 good summers is what you're looking for. Tell me about 25 years from now, looking back on LucidWild for both of you, what will have made this a success? What is the legacy you want to leave?
Yeah, I think foremost, I want to leave the legacy that we have made, that we have really exhibited great wines from a great vineyard. It deserves it. So we got into this for the wine part, and we want to make sure that this sense of place here in Dundee is exhibited and on the highest of levels, and that it produces wonderful wines that people can enjoy, they know about, they want to have in their cellars. That would be a huge achievement for us. I also think it would be great if the memories of people coming to LucidWild, they felt like, one thing, some of the conventions, I think we did this project, there's some conventions about fine food and fine wine that we wanted to challenge. And one of those was, often when we had fine food and fine wine, it went with somewhat of a pretentious and, a pretentious environment, and honestly, somewhat boring.
Quiet, formal, right? Yes.
Formal, yeah. And not, I never, maybe it's just our personalities, I never felt entirely comfortable there to necessarily be myself. I felt like I had to be a certain way. And I think our goal here is to provide an environment. If you come in here, you told us to turn the music off before we started this thing. We play music unapologetically loud. We want this to be a fun environment. We tell our staff, if you're not having fun, we all need to talk, because we're doing this for fun, and we want you to have fun. You can't fake fun. You can't fake a smile. People know it. So we want to make sure people come in here, and if in 25 years people are like, if you want to go have, fine food, fine wine, and you want to have fun, go to LucidWild. And if I'm able, if that's the reputation that we leave after 25 years, I will have accomplished the goal, what I set out to do here and what I think we set out to do.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, beyond the, the everyday tasting too, is also those special events too. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, we've only been open 3 weeks, have come here on their birthdays, every day there's somebody here on their birthday, there's somebody here celebrating their anniversary, there's somebody, and of all ages. And it's exciting to know that they're going to look back and say, oh, I spent my 40th or my 50th or our 25th wedding anniversary at LucidWild. And those are things you look back on for years, just like we talk about our first trip to Oregon. We still talk about that, and it's been well over 15 years. And so that's what I hope, that we have 25 years of people talking about how they felt when they were here. And like Blair said, wine is always first, wanting that wine to come first and foremost, and then that experience of providing a great experience for them just makes it better. And I look forward to, we created a space that we can grow into, and our experiences can change. And I'm looking forward to helping people put those experiences together, and and continually changing what we offer from an experience standpoint as well.
Yeah, and I hope in 25 years, not just about LucidWild either, but about the whole region. I mean, I think this is definitely the premier region to grow Pinot Noir, Chardonnay. It's becoming sparkling, and I'm sure you have Gamay that's out there too, and some other varietals. I truly believe with the weather patterns, we're producing some of the top wines in the world now. And we're definitely beginning to be recognized as such. And I think in 25 years, this will be the #1 wine growing region in the world. The most coveted wines will come from the Willamette Valley. And I think the Willamette Valley Wine Growers Associations, the Oregon Wine Board, the Dundee Hills Wine Growers Association, the different AVA associations that are here have done a really, really nice job promoting the varietals and promoting the values and the way people farm in Oregon, and some of the smaller producers, but also I have to commend some of those larger producers that have come into Oregon. It'll naturally happen. I mean, that's what happens with supply and demand, and no doubt, given the great wines that are being produced, the big producers are going to want to be part of it. But I commend them because the ones that have come in, I believe, have really tried or have allowed those wineries to maintain their identity in many ways. And I think that's, if you know anything about Oregon, definitely important to Oregonians. They're very prideful about their state, and they're very prideful about maintaining their identity. And the minute they feel like that's getting ripped away from Oregon, it's maybe the end of a brand, to be honest with you. But I think it's great that it's getting so much prominence. I think in 25 years, I honestly believe this will be the #1 wine growing region in the world.
All right. All the questions I have for the two of you today. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't talk about today that you were hoping to talk about?
Well, I guess all I would say is I really appreciate what Linfield College has done for not only documenting the history. I think you mentioned that there's 800 interviews. That's a really a great endeavor. People can look back on some of the pioneers. They can look back on we often say we're standing on the shoulders of giants. Look back at those interviews. I've watched the interviews, and they've guided me in what we want to do here. And without those resources being devoted to something like this, they wouldn't exist. So Linfield College also obviously is a big sponsor of the International Pinot Noir Celebration. I think is just being reworked in some fashion or form, and I'm sure it'll reemerge, but they now have this winery program that I think is great because by educating the future generations to appreciate wine and to know about viticulture and the business of wine, that just helps all of us, and it helps the region. And you're right, Linfield College is right here smack in the Willamette Valley, and there's no better place to learn about it than there. So I appreciate the commitment they've given to the Valley and what they've done, and I just want to just pass that on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and appreciate the two of you taking the time to share with us today. Thank you for sharing your beautiful space. Congratulations on getting it open. Thank you for sharing your stories with us as well. We'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you having us.